Okay. Well, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, for sure. So my name's Teddy Malone. I live in Rochester, New York. I heard you talking with, I think, Adam the other day, who's also from Rochester. So we got a little bit of a club out here. Been, let's see, Roman Catholic, and let's see, graduated Boston College in May. So just kind of getting into the working world and kind of working, just a standard marketing job here in town. And yeah, so yeah,
Okay.
I come from, a pretty great family, really nice upbringing here in Rochester, living back with my dad. And yeah, it was a good childhood. Had some ups and downs, but overall pretty great and pretty, blessed to have been able to go to Boston College and study what I studied, which was economics. So,
Okay. Did you ever meet Peter Kreeft?
I didn't, but I wish. See, I really kind of got into like Peterson and Christianity right around like senior year, and by then I don't know what it was, but I just didn't. It didn't line up with my schedule. But I've read a few of his books, namely Between Heaven and Hell, which I think we've had a few email exchanges about.
Yeah. 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 He grew up in northern New Jersey, went to a Reformed Church of America church, went to Eastern Christian, and which is my alma mater, a Christian school in New Jersey, and then went to Calvin College, and then broke all the Calvinist philosophers' heart by joining the Roman Catholic Church. So some people are still sore about it, but I enjoy
you
his
are or
books.
not?
I don't hold it against him.
Okay, good. Yeah, it seems he's got a pretty brilliant course at Boston College on C.S. Lewis, and one of my friends was taking that, and the reading list for that is straight out of one of your videos. It's just like Screw Tape Letters, A Mere Christianity, Four Loves, all of the good ones. So
Yeah. So what's on your mind?
yeah, I thought it was kind of funny. I was listening to I've been listening to your videos for some time, and you just started doing a lot of these interviews, and I thought I had a decent story about coming to Peterson. And then I really started listening carefully to some of the interviews you've been doing, and wow, like some other people's stories are just very, very incredible. And it's really humbling to hear how people came to Peterson and what he's done for them. So yeah, I thought I would share that. And it was interesting too, because I was listening to the video you posted this morning. And in a ways, it kind of lines up with a lot of what you were talking about, especially since I went through the Peterson kind of coming to him and learning about him in college. And I was actually, in college, I actually kind of became a social justice warrior type.
Really?
Yeah, really. So that was sophomore year, and sophomore year would have been 2015. So if you remember, I think that was like the Missouri protests and the football protests.
Yep.
And so I kind of got, I was in a few groups. So at Boston College, they don't have any fraternities or anything like that, but a lot of people join clubs and groups. And one of the clubs is a volunteering club. So you go into Boston. I worked at a homeless shelter, and that one was pretty good because it had more of a physical aspect of going out. But then there's also this group aspect, and that's kind of where it leaned a little social justice oriented. And then also there's another group called the Arupe program, which is Father Pedro Arupe was a Jesuit. And this was about a group that you had probably 10 or 15 people in it. You had some mentors who were professors, and you would meet once a week, and you'd kind of talk about social justice issues with the intention of halfway through, right around winter break, you go down to some Latin American country. And so originally we were supposed to go to El Salvador, but the kind of gang violence there made us go to the Dominican Republic. And so I spent some time down in the Dominican Republic. And that's also kind of another reason I want to talk to you, because you did your mission work down there.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to talk about kind of the mindset of being in the kind of that social justice milieu and being in that kind of headspace. Because I think that's something that I've been trying to figure out. And I guess I can kind of just jump into it. But when I first kind of came to it, I don't think that there was ever really like, oh, I'm in it. Like, but it was kind of just a slow, gradual process. And the way I kind of saw it was that, you know, Peterson talks about this kind of feeling and tendency, especially young people have, to you know, want to change the world. And I think he was relating that to Piaget, and that's like another stage that often isn't talked about. But there's definitely, you know, kind of that inner drive to want to change the world. And I think that's kind of really kind of where it comes from. And you kind of start, you know, going in circles, and they're talking about these big issues of the world. And you're kind of realizing, wow, like there's a lot more than I realized from my high school upbringing, just my kind of, especially where I grew up is, you know, pretty upper middle class upbringing. And you're realizing, wow, there's so much more to life than this upbringing. So you get to college, and then you kind of realize that your culture, your country is also in ways implicated in it, which I think is very true. No matter what, I think, you know, you can look at any country, you can look at any people, and I think that also holds true. But then you're kind of really, you have this kind of, oh, I want to change the world. Oh, I'm implicated in it. Like, all right, like I need to figure something out, and I need to be able to change it as much as possible. So being in it, you're kind of in these circles and these groups where that's kind of all that's on their mind. And so I think what happens is that you're kind of just forced into these bubbles and these thinking patterns and these echo chambers that really emphasize this way of thinking. And I don't know if did you end up reading Jonathan Haidt's new book?
No, I haven't gotten into it yet.
Oh, it's really
I
good.
bought it, but I haven't. I've got a lot of books.
You know, I picked it up, and I guess because I'm within this new generation, the Gen Z,
Yeah.
and I just kind of I read through it, and it was very spot on. But so he talks about the three great untruths of you know, or psychological thinking, and so the three are, I wrote these down. It's it's one of them is us versus them thinking. So the second is emotional reasoning, and the third is what doesn't kill you makes you weaker. So almost almost the opposite of Nietzsche's quote.
Right.
And so I would say, like, when I read those three, they really clicked, especially the first two, or sorry, the second two. So the second one being kind of trusting your emotions over facts, and kind of trusting this emotional reasoning. And because when you're in this mindset of, oh, I want to change the world, you you're going with your gut, and you're not really reflecting on other ways of viewing the same problem, if that makes sense.
Yeah, makes perfect sense.
So you're talking with all these people, and they're saying, wow, like the injustice of, for example, maybe America going down and into Latin America and really destroying some of these dictators. How could we live in such a society?
Yeah.
But then as I started to develop beyond this stage, you learn to see it in different ways. Like, oh, well, there's the Cold War filter you can put on that. America might have needed to do that because, you know, the other option could have been cut. So there's a lot of different ways, but when you're stuck in this kind of way of thinking, you're thinking about the unidimensional, as Peterson always talks about, way of looking at the world. And it's always this, I need to criticize myself. I need to criticize the country. I need to criticize the culture that I'm in. And so that's the emotional reasoning. And then the third one is what doesn't kill you makes you weaker. So there's kind of this feeling that anybody that challenges you is kind of stepping out of line, and that you shouldn't be exposed to that. And because I'm trying to remember how I felt, but it's like, if I'm exposed to that, then maybe that's not a valid way of thinking. And like, I'm really attached to this notion that I need to go out and save the world. But then this, I think, links really well with what you've talked about in this video that you just did, and also kind of what John McWhorter talks about. And it's this like religion, this really kind of religiosity that's getting into this secular religion. And it's even creepy. And, you know, Boston College by no means is secular. We don't have frats. We have a lot of Jesuits. But it's even creeping into that kind of Christian realm and the Christian university. And I see it influencing even scholarship to a certain degree.
Yes. Oh, yeah. It is, you know, I've tried to make a video about this. I haven't pulled it off yet, But I began noticing this in the mid-teens, the mid-20 teens in my denomination. And I began looking at this. I'm saying, this is a religion. And it's got some eerie similarities to conservative Calvinism, which I know well because I grew up in the Christian Reformed Church.
Right.
And then when James Lindsay makes that comment on intersectionality as a religion, that video that they did, I thought, and he mentions Calvinism, I thought, well, he doesn't really know Calvinism, but I know Calvinism, and that is this. We are dealing here with a religion, and I've watched it get into the church, and people then suddenly believe that, well, if I'm tearing down the patriarchy for Jesus. It's like, oh, okay.
Right.
I guess we got to rename God the Father then. But we talked about that since the 70s.
Yeah.
So no, that's right. It is a religion, and
there's a lot of. Oh, I'm sorry. There's a lot of theology in the theology class that we have to take. I took it senior year, Intro to Christian Theology. There was a ton of readings that we had to do where it's like criticizing God the Father and why it should be God the
not the what? That's the
no, yeah. What do you transition that to? I have no idea.
God the parent? It's like
it doesn't really work that well.
It doesn't really work. And you go, God the mother, and it's like, yeah, but now things are changing. There's And Peterson was really helpful for me with thinking about, okay, why is it God the Father? Because I had simply inherited it as part of the package, but I hadn't done much thinking about what's the masculine. And I had always known, for example, in Luke 15, the father of Luke 15, with the parable of the two sons, the church has long known that father has integrated within him masculine and feminine characters, because it's not, there's a father and a mother, that's just a father, but the father does a bunch of feminine things in the process of the story. And Christians have known that forever, and they've just said, well, that's God. Male and female come out of God. So that they're both in God. God is not a man, but God the Father, God the Son, there's an implicit narrative in there that makes some sense. Of course, actually, Peter Kreeft would be all over this. I've seen him with bald head lately, and I worried that maybe he got cancer or something. I don't know, but
I'm not sure.
But these questions of masculine and feminine, they mean something.
Right. I mean, even Jung with his quaternity, I think, instead of the Trinity.
Yeah.
He even had that kind of heresy, I guess, going on. So that was kind of the thinking space that I was in, as well as it really is weird being in that kind of religion and that space, because I think you're really living it in this kind of bubble. And the Joe Rogan that you talked about with the Peter Boghossian, and James Lindsay. I think Joe Rogan's spot on, where it's like, these people, we're living in, if you're in university, you're in a bubble, and having come out of it, you do really realize how much of a bubble atmosphere it is. And so I think that it kind of just perpetuates. But then one other thing that I was thinking about recently was the fact that you have this one kind of faction within university, this social justice. And you also, especially these elite universities, you have a lot of people that are on the finance track, or high-end lawyer track. And these, I feel like, are the two most vocal factions within. So kind of no wonder that the social justice are looking and saying, like, oh, this is the only other way of being in the world. And in a way, it's kind of like they really are kind of focused on getting as much wealth and power, and maybe not power, but they're really focused on being in the upper class and having a good job that pays a lot, and then they can live comfortably and prosperous. So in a way, they're kind of both seeing the world through this lens of economic prosperity and economic opportunity, but then they're just kind of criticizing each other. Whereas I think the world is so much more complicated, and they never really give a chance for that to come in.
Well, I think there's going to be a lot of people who leave college that, and I've seen it in a number of cases. So they've got all these, and again, it's not unlike what I see with Christians. They've got all these ideas about how the world should be. Then they get out into the world and it's like, whoosh, you are, I'm just going to call these people out. Call away, bucko.
Yeah. See how far that gets. Yeah.
They're all going to look at you like, okay, go.
Yeah.
There's one Facebook group that someone included me in. Go be postmodern someplace else. It's like, yeah, go up. I'm gonna walk away from you and all this chatter. And the fear then gets to be, well, they're gonna grab institutional power and try to wield it, and that's what we're seeing.
Right.
But then there comes a point when people underneath. I mean, John Locke's idea about the consent of the governed. That is on one hand a philosophy, it's also an observation.
A reality, right.
That people at some point are going to say, and I agree with Peterson that a big part of the election of Donald Trump was a group of people saying, oh, that's how you want to play? You'll like this guy.
Right, exactly. And, but no, actually to that point, it's the thing that kind of drew me out of my social justice phase was, so kind of coming in touch with reality. And so the way that I kind of came in touch with reality was, so first we went to the Dominican Republic on this trip. And so that was 7-10 days or so. We went out to I guess that'd be the West Coast, the Western border, right along.
Really? Oh, you were near where I was.
Yeah, it was the Lago Enriquillo.
Lago Enriquillo. Oh yeah, that was just a little northwest. I lived in Barahona.
Oh, okay. That's kind of closer towards, I guess, the beaches.
Yeah.
Right.
It's right on the coast.
Right. So we were there, and that was really great experience, those 10 days. But actually, at the end of those 10 days, we ran into a Boston College alumna in Zona Colonial in Santo Domingo.
Yeah.
And she's working with a microfinance organization.
Yeah.
So I was able to link up with her and go back down to Santo Domingo for the summer.
Oh,
and
okay.
I spent that whole summer, it was like 10 weeks or so.
Okay.
So that was the summer, 2016 summer, and that was the summer before the election. And so being down there, I really didn't have too many friends, and I was kind of, I was working an internship, and I really kind of came into touch with reality down there, and kind of the hard way, because I also didn't really speak Spanish that well, so it was kind of just like thrown to the lions, and
you went down into the underworld.
Exactly, yeah. And but so I was down there, and in between kind of becoming an adult, living on my own for the first time, I was listening to a lot of podcasts and getting into Joe Rogan, and it was kind of interesting because the transition from becoming a social justice warrior to becoming what I was before I found Peterson was kind of this. I think it was kind of analogous to what Nietzsche talks about with almost like the death of God. So it's and at this point, I was kind of religious, and then I went down to the Dominican Republic, and I started really listening to all these different podcasts. Came in touch with Joe Rogan, came in touch with some like libertarian ideas, and that really influenced me. Some objectivism, and then also Sam Harris. So I kind of got into really kind of like atheism, and I was like really kind of set for a little bit. It was probably 1 or 2 months, and it was maybe not 100% set, but like 90-95% of the way there. And so it was kind of like this Nietzschean death of God, where I had this one value structure, and then after I realized it was pretty bogus, after I started really listening to other people, and I was on my own, so I wasn't in an echo chamber, then it was like there was nothing. And then because of that, then I kind of started filling it with libertarianism and objectivism and Ayn Rand, which is really good stuff in certain senses, but in other senses it's also ideological possession to a certain extent, where it's just the other side almost. But then also kind of that creeping nihilism of not really being sure of what to believe, if I should be believing anything. And that really affected me junior year. So that would have been 2 years ago. So junior year fall. And I guess just like one example of this would have been, 2 years ago on election day. And so I was kind of just like fed up with voting. I was thinking in this very libertarian way. It's like, what does it matter? It's like, I'm living in Massachusetts, and I vote in New York. It's like, it's not going to matter either way. What I did was I got finished with class at like 2 or 3, and I started drinking. And it was a fun night. It was a very wild, but it was, there was no meaning behind it. It was empty. It was escaping the reality of what I was actually dealing with.
Yeah.
And then it was probably like 2 weeks later. And, to this point I was following Joe Rogan pretty consistently. And then it was like 2 weeks later that I heard Jordan Peterson. And I can still like remember exactly where I heard that podcast. It was in this Dunkin' right near Chestnut Hill in Massachusetts. And I was just sitting there. And, at first it was kind of like, oh, it's political stuff. And then he got into this Carl Jung stuff, and he got into this. And, I was kind of familiar with Jung from taking Latin throughout high school. And my teacher would, everyone, he's a pretty big geek, and he'd bring it up every once in a while and say, Carl Jung and Joseph Campbell and Star Wars. And we'd relate that to like the Odyssey or something.
Oh, okay.
Or the
I wondered how you'd get there from Latin class. So,
yeah,
all right.
yeah. Yeah. So, but then I heard what he was talking about with, this archetypal mother and archetypal father. And I was so blown away. And then, and then from there I started listening to him, taking it to heart. And, at that point I was still kind of, like trying to be, kind of like mushy and not be full on, God. And it took me probably 5 or 6 months. Still had some pretty big struggles after that. I went abroad again, actually, to Ireland. So I was pretty blessed with being able to do that twice. And, through it was actually a pretty like spiritual experience that I like came, and I was like, all right, like God exists, and like there's no more running away from my faith. There's no more, putting that away. And since then, it's, everything that you've heard from other people, I would say applies to me. It's, it's day and night who I was before that, where my life was going, and then where my life is right now and where it can be heading. And yeah, wow. And it's, I don't know, there is something about what you said about Peterson exercising demons.
Yeah.
And like that is so spot on. And there's definitely that kind of dark side that was kind of consuming me.
Yeah.
And from whether it was just drinking to escape or kind of pushing off the responsibilities and being a decent person or a decent roommate.
Yeah.
And then having that away and seeing how it's been a year and a half, 2 years since I've really taken it seriously, and it really is day and night. And
that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really cool. And when I made the video about Peterson as the unauthorized exorcist, I wondered if people would connect with that idea, because that's what I see him doing with people. And now there's a more literalistic way to understand that, and then there's a more metaphorical way to understand that. And people are, you get stuck in this life in ways, in things. And sometimes I love the scene in The Lord of the Rings when Gandalf basically exorcises Theoden, king of Saruman, because it's just such a vivid depiction of, first it's a vivid depiction of, possession. Theoden has become colonized. He's become the slave of Saruman, and Gandalf frees him. But now Theoden, and then soon after that, Aragorn and Theoden want Gandalf, or Aragorn and Gandalf want Theoden, okay, ride out and get involved in the war. And Theoden's like, not so fast. And it's like, see, Theoden is not now Gandalf's puppet.
Right.
Free. And that means that he exercises all of the responsibility and freedom, but it's now, and this is of course a picture of the freedom we have in Christ.
Right. Definitely.
That Christ, it doesn't make us his robot.
Yeah.
We are his, he is our master, but he wants us to be, he wants us to be how he made us to be.
Right.
So
more fully ourselves.
Yeah.
I'm very, like, that analogy I think works perfectly, and it is pretty incredible.
What a crazy world where this Jordan Peterson character is, again, that's what fascinates me about this is people say, you're, no, look at this guy, Teddy, listen to his story. It's right there.
Yeah.
It doesn't, I'm not saying anything about, that. I'm just saying this is what's happening.
Definitely. Yeah.
And when I hear stories like this, I say, well, this is the work of God. God does this.
Yeah.
He liberates us. He frees us. And, it was so funny when I remember I had a college trip down to Nicaragua and Honduras. And it was mostly trip down to Nicaragua during the Sandinista regime.
Right.
And, I remember going down there, and one of the women going down on our tour was all excited because she was going to meet the poor. Right. And I had grown up in Patterson, and it's like, huh? Who are these glowy poor people that you're all, you have trouble finding poor people? Where do you live? Poor people are all over the place, and they're not, they're not sainted because of their poverty.
Right.
Now, they don't have the same kind of temptations and burdens that wealthy people have.
Yeah.
But they're poor people. That's what they are. And, we went down to Nicaragua, and I think some of the people were just they thought they were going to see the glowing left-wing revolution that was the great Sandinista revolt against the oppressive dictator. And that's true. The dictator was oppressive, but then the Sandinistas became oppressive, and Daniel Ortega becomes something of a dictator. And it's like, okay, freedom is not such an easy thing. So you've got the tyranny of the left, you got the tyranny of the right, and then you have the implicit tyrannies within a free society, and you also can't become captive to those, because many of those have much more transparent prisons that are not so easy to see. And I think that's what you've described.
That's almost like the I don't know if you saw Node's recent video with where he uses N.T. Wright's "The Gods That We Worship Now."
Oh, I didn't see that one.
Yeah, that's a really good one, and he talks about the three gods that are implicit in our society, and three among many, but that no one ever called. That all the ancients would understand very quickly, but no one calls out. And I think he uses Mammon, god of war Ares, and Eros, god of sex.
Yep.
And that's true. Yeah, so I think that's very true. But I wanted to ask you about what you thought of the Dominican Republic, and just some questions. Well, I mean, I guess coming off that one point is what I saw after we got back from the Dominican Republic. This was the first trip we got back, and it was very much this kind of orientation still to kind of change the world. It was kind of this, on one hand, a company, but then on the other hand, try to change, systems and structures. Then I heard, it must have been a few months ago when you were talking about your time down in the Dominican Republic, that you realized that that's almost impossible, that their lives are kind of in such a way that the freedom that we want for them, the only way they could really achieve it would be in new life and Yeah, the afterlife.
So when I went down there, I'm a young, idealistic, got my newly minted seminary degree. I'm working for a mission organization that has money and missionaries, and these are poor people. And, $100 can make a big difference in people's lives. And, what's $100? Yeah, it's money, but it's, a mission organization has thousands and thousands of dollars with which to help people. And people often misinterpret me. So I had a conversation with Mr. Reagan, and he hasn't posted it yet. And people listen to me say, "Well, he's a conservative," and it's like, I'm kind of hard to categorize, because on one hand, as I see racism, oppressive structures, all of those things are true. And when I listened to Peterson, what I appreciated about Peterson was like, yeah, you're not just going to knock these things down with, oh, that's capitalism or the oppressive hierarchy. Oh, no, no, no. These things go way deeper than that. And this is one of the things I learned in the Dominican Republic, that I thought, well, I've got theology and I'm going to teach them theology. And you discover that they're not terribly impressed with my theology anyway. And some of their motivations to have a relationship with me are purely mercenary. And okay, so then we're going to do all the community development work, and this is going to be helpful. And sometimes it is. Sometimes those projects are enormously helpful, and it really helps people, straighten out their lives and get some things right. But it's almost always small. It's almost always dependent upon whether that person is really going to work it themselves. And it's not like penicillin. You've got someone who's got an infection and you give them an antibiotic and boom, things turn around well. People are way more complicated than an infection that can be treated with penicillin. And these structures are all inherent in it. And so part of what I learned in that chapter of my life, I had to learn about my limitations. I had to learn about, if you use Jungian terms, I had to learn about my shadows. And so I left the Dominican Republic a much more sober, less triumphalistic individual.
Right.
And I should, see, what it did was it energized and activated a lot of the lessons I had learned in Paterson, New Jersey, growing up and watching similar things in my father's ministry. So, and what it did was give me a sobriety about the kinds of world-fixing schemes we imagine will somehow bring the kingdom of God in our midst.
Right.
Because we can't do it. And amazing things can happen. And when they do happen, it's wonderful. But with almost every fast transformation, there are downsides. So we get rid of the horses and we no longer have all the horse crap all over the streets. Well, we've got these lovely horseless carriages that are, that aren't leaving anything. Well, it's going up into the air. Okay. Well, and we're traveling through highways at 50 miles an hour and there's an accident and people are flying through windshields. Okay. So then we fix the windshield. Well, now they're hitting the windshield. Okay. So now we have airbags. And then it's.
Yeah. It's like fractilic. It's never ending with.
That's right. That's right.
And yeah, I think kind of going back to the kind of beginning, that's almost a social justice misconception and wish that to bring the kingdom of heaven on earth.
That's right. And so I like to, there's two things. One of the things is I always emphasize witness, not bringing the kingdom, because we can't do this, but bearing witness to the kingdom. Yeah. And the other is misery, deliverance, gratitude, because what we're doing is not saving the world. What we're doing is bearing witness to, to Jesus and his kingdom. And then we do this out of gratitude, not out of a Messiah complex that has us imagine, well, I can fix you. I can't even fix myself.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
I look at myself and it's like, oh man, you know, there's a
Mm.
world of things that need fixing in me. And those are that's just the short list I see. You know, talk to other
Sure.
people who know me and ask, you know, they can do a better, longer list
Right.
of ways I
Exactly.
fall short.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
That reminds me of, you got me onto the book The Narnian about C.S. Lewis.
oh yeah, beautiful book.
Yeah. And when he starts kind of looking at his own thoughts, and it's like every third or second thought, it's like some self promoting and self congratulatory thought. And I too see those same thoughts, and just like, we're not structured to be able to fix that. And I guess you're right. The best we could really do is be grateful for the kingdom that Jesus inaugurated, and try to live that out as best as possible.
And be encouraged by the promise that, you know, of his final victory that will come. And for me, so you know, I had a year in the Dominican Republic, then I had to come back to the United States for my ordination examinations, and I was being ordained, and so then I'm getting examined, and one of the things that the Dominican Republic really took out of me was this triumphalism. And what that did was say, okay, that these people that I'm ministering with, most of them are going to die in poverty. They are never going to have much money. They are going to get sick with diseases that have been cured. They are going to be in jeopardy from motorcycle accidents. They are going to be in jeopardy from the thing that ticks me off is that this social justice thing has taken what for me was a really good term, which I refuse to surrender. I still see social justice as bearing witness. It's not.
Mm.
And so all of these people, these friends of mine who are pastors in the Dominican Republic, they are not going to have a nice, comfortable life like I can enjoy by virtue of to whom and where they were born. What hope do they have? Well, first of all, there are many joys that they experience in their life that are completely separate from the kind of affluence that we assume is part of what makes life worth living. But
Right.
also, I take serious that God, in his justice and in the redemption of Christ, will 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 give them his kingdom. That it is not that what justice finally tells us is that just because I was given this amazing opportunity to be born in this amazing time and place doesn't mean the vast majority of people in the world who have suffered horribly have no hope. And that's why I can't be a materialist. Because
Right.
if that materialist conception of the world is as it has to be in their scheme, I don't want to have any part of it.
No, it's not. It's not beautiful. It's not. It's not right. It's not. It's not worth being a part of.
No, no, no. So that's what I learned in the Dominican Republic. And
Wow.
you know, I pastor in a in a poor place of town and a struggling church, and you know, I'm not I I can't surrender the hope of glory for people for whom this world has been cruel, and I won't surrender that hope.
Hmm.
It's I because I you know it doesn't make sense when I see the kind of places and ways God has planted glory here and now. It leads me to believe he's just getting started. And
Exactly.
C.S. Lewis, for me, The Last Battle is one of my favorite books of his. C.S. Lewis, for me, he's able better than many others to flesh that out, this further up and further in. We're going to see the true Narnia. And that's where his Platonism, people say, well, C.S. Lewis is, yeah, his true Narnia, old Narnia, that's Platonism. I get that.
Yeah.
But I still like the image and real Narnia and true Narnia. And I want to see I want to see the person that has been their life has been derailed by autism. I want to see them sing. The person who has been hobbled by mental illness, by bipolar or schizophrenia, I want to see them delivered. I want to see them come into the richness of the created goodness that's already planted in them. I want to see that come to full flourish. And I know it's not going to happen here. And so I'm all my chips are there, you know?
It's not a bad place to have all your chips.
No. Why
That's
have them in the other place?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, no, this person, they're mentally ill, and, well, the best we can do is kill them. It's like, no, no, I won't go there. I have hope for, because of the resurrection, I believe in his redemption. And, you know, that's where I'm going. Otherwise, you know, otherwise Jordan Peterson, he always brings up cocaine and this, you know. Well, you can take a lot of cocaine. He had to have had a patient that was, you know, you can take a lot of cocaine.
That's one of the YouTube videos that it's like the cuts of him saying, just take a lot of cocaine. And it's like 2 minutes long. And it's so good.
that guy who does the little montage of the Peterson talking to himself.
Yeah.
Genius.
The Joe Rogan one. Oh, so
good. I watch those. I laugh so hard. I laugh so hard at those.
So great.
Well, we got a few more minutes. Anything else on your list you wanted to cover?
If you have time for one more question.
Sure.
This is actually, I remember when I was a kid, I was in a religion class, a Catholic religion class. And I was like very perplexed about this because I've always kind of been like thinking about like outer space and aliens too. And so I'm just kind of curious, like this is the way I posed the question in the class was, you know, if we find out that there's there's an alien civilization, would Jesus have become incarnate in that civilization?
C.S. Lewis writes about that a lot, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, he does. He talks about that. Well, not a lot, but in a few places he talks about that. And he speculates on it, and what shape, you know, did Jesus do this work here to save them too?
Right.
I don't know. Or did Jesus come incarnate within that to, because Lewis, for a while, you know, he wrote his science fiction trilogy, you know, Out of the Silent Planet, and Paralandra, and That Hideous Strength, and I really have to get back into those. I read those as a teenager, but I was too young to really understand them then. And so Lewis played with those ideas.
Cool. Yeah.
And I don't know, you know.
Yeah.
I can't know what God's doing with me, much less aliens.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But it's a great question.
Yeah.
I wish I knew.
Yeah, no, I've been wondering about that for
ever since you were a kid. Wow. Yeah. What does alien Jesus look like?
I hope someone makes a drawing of that. That'd be pretty great.
The alien Jesus meme.
Oh no, I guess it would probably have to be a Catholic or Orthodox.
That's right. The Protestants. Oh, we can't do that. I'm Jonathan Peugeot. Okay, Jonathan, if you're listening to this video, the alien Jesus meme. He'd have some spiritual reason why he can't do it. I know he would, but he's such a good guy. I love Jonathan.
Yeah, he's great. Well, thank you for this. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Teddy. Thanks for reaching out, and this is just so much fun. So I'll send you a copy of it, and you can decide if we should share it. But this has been a great time.
Yeah, sounds good. And thanks for all the videos you do. It's really a fantastic way to spend a few hours.
Well, thank you. I'm surprised and gratified that they're helpful to people. I'm delighted by that.
Yeah, they really are. So,
well, thank you. Take care. Good to meet you.
You too.